Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Being Beautifully Honest podcast. And I wanted to talk about Tyra Banks, and she has been in some of the online headlines in the past week, and it was regarding America's Next Top Model. Now, we know that show hasn't aired in years, and I actually used to be a religious watcher of the show in the beginning, and then maybe around season 9 or season 10, something like that, I kind of fell off from watching it, because in the very beginning, this was around the beginning of the reality, like known reality show style competition shows, but for modeling, it was something that was very entertaining but interesting. And someone who myself grew up as a little girl actually wanting to be a model. I did not become that, but it was something that really interested me because at that time when that show started coming on, I was already a young woman that was married, had a child. That was it for me. So I wasn't even going to try to pursue it, but it was cool to watch other people pursue it. Now, she was in the headlines because for whatever reason, an old clip from one of the past seasons where Tyra Banks was talking to one of the contestants, and this is actually one of my favorite seasons, and I was so happy that she was one of the persons that won because Danny is her name, Danny Evans from Cycle 6. I really liked her from the very beginning because she was on the season that had, you know, some of the characters that were just like, oh my God, did she really say that? Did she really do that? And the person that stood out in that season, she did not win, and she actually made it to close to the end. Her name was Jade, and Jade was a trip because she was like, this is not, you know, a place to make friends. This is a competition. I'm here to win. She was telling people she was the best thing since sliced bread. She didn't care about these girls, and she was really humbled, or maybe she faked the humility. I don't know, to, you know, stay on the show. But she would be one of the ones that would be in the, you know, the final 2, and she would have her name called and her picture handed to her by Tyra Banks. So she made it, and she would say, thank you for believing in me. And it was so unbelievable, but it was like whatever, but it was entertaining. So I'm gonna get off of the speech and spiel about Jade, but Danny, along with one other person who was a contestant on the show, and the other person was Caucasian, I believe her name was Jojo. She had some messed up teeth, the JoJo girl. Like, she had some teeth that were just like crooked and crowded, and she actually needed more work dental wise than any of the other girls. So this girl, she really went through dental torture to get her teeth fixed, but it was something that she wanted to do as well because she said that she grew up in a household where they didn't have money. Her parents couldn't afford to get braces. Been there, done that. Got braces when I was an adult as well because my parents couldn't afford to do it either. But with Danny, she had a gap in her front teeth, her 2 front teeth, and when the dentist asked her if she wanted to have her gap closed, she said no, you know, just clean my teeth, brighten them up, but I'm not interested in closing my gap. This is my signature gap. I'm happy with it, and this is all good for me. Well, on Twitter, Slick Woods, who is a model, she's actually a model for Fenty. She is known for the gap in her teeth, and she's got a shaven head. She's not bald, but her hair, she's got a buzz cut. Pretty chick too, and she called out this clip on Twitter, and she tweeted at Danny about it, and she was just like, you know, how could this even be allowed? And Danny responded to it. She said she thought about not responding to it, but when Slick Woods mentioned her on Twitter, she decided that she had to speak on it. So she gave a little, you know, comment. I won't say a little comment, but she gave her views on the situation about what happened back in the day. And I'm just going to let you guys listen to part of this, and then I'll get back to my commentary on the situation.
Guys, what's up? It's Danny here. Wow, what a crazy day yesterday with that video going viral. So this video is just to weigh in on everything. I appreciate all of the news outlets that reached out to see if I wanted to comment. I honestly didn't feel it necessary until late last night when I received a message from Slick Woods. Shout out to you, Slick. I knew in that moment, after reading her words, that I have a responsibility to address what really happened and to speak my truth. But let me tell you what this video is not. This is not a video to war against anyone. This is not a video to defame anyone's character. And this is not a video to discuss my relationship with Tyra. This is a video for me to speak my truth and to provide clarity and for me to address an issue that was done 15 years ago that carries weight and that clearly affected a lot of young girls in America after watching it. Before I get into the ins and outs of that episode, I want to take you guys back a little bit before we go forward so that everything makes sense and flows cohesively. I did top model listening to the wisdom of Elliot, my brother. Honestly, the greatest wisdom he could have ever given me, even though at the time I thought it was so dumb. He knew I wanted to get out of Little Rock really badly. And he was like, yo, you should do top model just to get out. I was like, I would never in my life do that. It's fake modeling. They humiliate girls. Terrible idea. He was like, yo, just do it to get out. It's a one-way ticket out to New York. Genius. Bingo. We're doing top model. With that being said, I had one goal in mind. The one goal was to get out of my hometown, to create a different, better life for myself. That was it. I wasn't concerned about challenges. I wasn't concerned about the things that would be set up in place to kind of deter me and to knock me off my game. I was so focused. I wasn't even hungry. I was starved to get out. You need to understand that, starved. So any and everything, the opposition that came my way, I was so deaf to it because I had a goal. And anyone that stood in my way of getting out of Little Rock was gonna get bulldozered over. Period. There were a few things that came up. Like the first one I think was my diction, my dialect, my accent, whatever you want to label it. When I'm filming and I'm in the middle of it, I had no idea that I sounded different than the rest of the girls. I'm like, all right, like how do I fix it? You say I sound weird, how do I fix it? It wasn't until I got off of the show, went back home, and then I watched the show over and I was like, oh, it's just a matter of me enunciating my words. You know what I'm saying? Done, easy, fixed it, moving on to the next. Cut to that particular episode. Let's get into it about the gap. We were all going to the dentist as a whole. Me and Joni went first. We get to the dentist and the guy asked me, do you want to get anything done to your teeth? And I say, yeah, clean me up, whiten my teeth. He repeatedly asked me if I want to close my gap. No, I don't want to close my gap. Pushpin, none of this aired on TV. I'm giving you guys the behind the scenes, right? He kept asking me if I wanted to close my gap. Nah, bruh, super cool. I'm super secure in my gap. Of course, like any other kid, I'd be lying to you if I said I grew up loving my long neck, my jawbone, and my gap. I did not. I hated it all. I used to cry and ask my mother for braces. We couldn't afford braces. What did my mother say to me? She reminded me that my two grandmothers, who I absolutely adored, had gaps. They're queens. You're just like your grandmothers. You know what? I learned to accept and love my gap. So on Top Model, when they wanted to close it, I was like, nah, fam, I'm good. Cut to, we're now in elimination. So I go forward. Tyra's like, why didn't you get your gap closed? I'm like, huh? She's like, I told you to get your gap closed. I'm like, no, you didn't. She looks off camera right to production, which none of you guys ever see. I look off stage, camera right to production. Kim Mott gives me one of these. In that moment, I knew what was happening. I knew that I was basically set up and not being told that Tyra wants me to get my gap closed so that it's good for TV, right? So in that moment, the 19, 20-year-old Danielle stood there realizing that it was my one-way ticket out on this side or keeping my gap on this side and going back to Little Rock, Arkansas. What you think I'm gonna choose, fam? So Tyra says to me, if I send you back to the dentist, will you get your gap closed? And I meet her with another question. So what you're saying to me is, if I tell you no, then you're gonna send me home tonight. Me and Tyra went and did that whole fiasco about 2 or 3 times, which you guys saw none of that on TV. What you saw is me coming up with a compromise saying that I'm okay with you closing it some of the way, but not all of the way. Let me explain something to you. The family that I come from, a family of hustlers, a family of go-getters, I was not going to allow something that is physical on my face to stop me from getting out to make a better life for myself. I had a laser focused goal. Nothing or no one was going to stand in my way. And it wasn't about copping out. It was about understanding what really carries weight and holds value in my life, and teeth was not one of them. I wasn't tight because of Tyra's comment about me not being able to model with a gap. I wasn't tight about Miss J's comment about leaving the gap wide open for the next girl. All of that was trivial to me. I've heard it all before. What I was tight about is them trying to play me and making good for TV. However, the me now and reading the comments and understanding the weight that it created in other girls who saw that. This is why this post is being made, because I want to address all of those young girls, because I've been using this time in quarantine to really go back and to love on and to nurture the little Danielle from childhood. So I'm gonna take this time to build up and to speak to all of my young queens that saw that episode, that were truly affected by Tyra's words. I want to speak to you right now. You're beautiful. And I'm not talking about a physical feature. It doesn't matter if you have a gap, stacked teeth, straight teeth, it matters not. It doesn't matter if you're black, brown, white, indifferent, other. It doesn't matter. What makes you beautiful is in here. It's a matter of your self-worth, high self-worth or low self-worth. And no one can establish that except you. So I'm speaking to all the little girls. And if I could love on all of you right now, I would. I want to remind you of your worth. You're a masterpiece. You were so loved. You were so adored, and you're beautiful. And it's not because someone higher up says that you're beautiful. You don't become a star because someone acknowledges your light. You are light. You are worth. You are valued. You are loved. Always stand in your truth and your power, and don't let anyone ever tell you that you're not. If you have a goal, go for it. Bulldozer any and everybody out the way that's standing in opposition of you. I love you guys. Be well.
All right, so you heard what she had to say. And there were other people on Twitter who responded to it. And actually, there were some contestants from the previous seasons. One of my favorites as well, Eugenia Washington. She did not win her season, but she was very close to it. And I really, really liked her. She was a darker skinned chocolate girl, just beautiful, very quiet and reserved. She actually reminds me a lot of me. Not in terms of her beauty, but just in terms of how she carried herself, and not really just boisterous, a little bit shy and reserved, and having to kind of be pulled out of her shell. And she reminded me a lot of myself. So I really, really like Eugenia. But she commented on it on Twitter, and she said only, and she put in all caps, "We know." And then Jay Manuel, he was actually a part of America's Next Top Model for many years. And to be quite honest, they called him Mr. J, and then there was Miss J. Miss J was, one of the judges later on in later seasons, but he was there pretty much from the very first season, teaching the ladies how to walk. Like, he was the runway diva and teaching the women how to walk. But Mr. J, he was a part of the makeup and the girls' looks and the creativity part of it. And so he was a pinnacle part of the show. He even responded and he said, "Yes, speak your truth." Now, that might have come as a little bit of a surprise, but Jay Manuel, he said that he's not as close to Tyra Banks anymore, and we really have no relationship. And I'll just share some of the things that he said from the article. So in a recent interview with Variety, Manuel, he said some of the more uncomfortable experiences during his 18 seasons working as a creative director on the show, and how he hasn't maintained a close relationship with Banks, who served as host and executive producer. So he says, quote, "Over the past few years, we've emailed. To be very honest, we really have no relationship to speak of, which is really sad. Our time together on antm was amazingly productive and at times magical. We got to experience being part of a global phenomenon." So being the creative director doesn't mean that he came up with all of the concepts. Now, there was one that was slammed for, a lot of people. They just felt like it was very weird because there was in cycle 4, there was a challenge where the models had to swap races. So for instance, one person who was Caucasian, she may have become, I don't know, like Mandarin or, you know, something like that. And he says, you know, I do think it's a little unfair for people to persecute Tyra now, especially because she has already taken heat for her past executive decisions in past years. However, I can't really defend her either, because when ratings were high and things were great, she remained a clear figurehead because it was her show. And I know friendships evolve and sometimes dissolve, and it's possible that their friendship dissolved, but he's writing a book, and the book's title is The Wig, the Bitch, and the Meltdown. So I'm quite sure that in the book he's going to be revealing more about why they don't really have a friendship, you know, anymore, or relationship. But, you know, it's funny because the thing that stood out to me a lot, because Tyra Banks consistently talked about it, especially in the earlier seasons of America's Next Top Model, and maybe even before America's Next Top Model, some interviews that she would do, she would talk about how she had it hard as a model and she wasn't treated fairly or nicely. And then she consistently made it clear that Naomi Campbell was very mean to her, and she was disappointed because she felt like Naomi Campbell, being another African American model who had been around before her, would be more of an embrace, you know, type of situation, instead of, you know, pushing her away or not wanting to welcome her or give her some tips or show her the ropes, you know, and things like that. So she felt like she had to fend for herself, and she just felt like because, you know, Naomi Campbell, was a little bit more on the mean girl side, because that's pretty much how she tried to make Naomi Campbell come across, as the mean girl type, that she was going to be the opposite. So to hear these stories about how Tyra Banks was not the nicest person, that doesn't really surprise me, because let's just be honest, and I'm just gonna, I don't like to use the term devil's advocate, but I'm just gonna say that when you are in a position of power and you are a leader, a lot of times you have to sort of be the bitch a little bit, because then people run over you or take advantage of you. And who knows what she had to go through and the hoops and hurdles that she had to, you know, get through in order to get the type of opportunity that she had to host a show like America's Next Top Model that had a very, very successful run for many, many years. But because it was a reality show, and reality shows, even though it's a competition, it is based on some drama as well. So in order to tick things up and get the, you know, the heat going, it was probably required that they did have some elements of surprise where there was some drama, or they were calling people out or not being, you know, very nice, and or keeping somebody along on the show a lot longer than they probably deserved to be, simply because they had a lot of drama with their personality, like Jade from the season that Danny won from America's Next Top Model. And although Tyra Banks was the face of America's Next Top Model, who's to say she really had all of the pull and made all of the decisions regarding the things that were aired, the things that were said, who was called out, the challenges that they had to do, the things that were said when they would give people their critiques. Because honestly, that show wasn't really made to build up models. It was really meant to tear people down. And there were some people who were contestants on the show that came out and shared things that they had experienced. I remember from the first season, the first winner, her name was Adrienne. And this was years ago. She won the first cycle. She actually came out and said that Tyra Banks didn't help her with anything. Yeah, she won this stuff, but there was no follow-up with it. So she said she really had to hustle and do things for herself. So a lot of the jobs and opportunities, she was on some reality shows and, you know, different spreads and photo shoots and different things like that she did over the years. I mean, I don't know where she is now, but she said Tyra Banks didn't really do anything for me. I had to do that for myself. The show gave me exposure, and, you know, and I won. I'm the winner. I can say that. But a lot of the different companies where she would want to book bookings with didn't really take it seriously. So she had to really get out there and hustle and do it for herself. So, you know, that was one person who was a contestant that said some negative things. There was another contestant, I don't remember her name, but she had vitiligo, and she said some negative things about Tyra Banks. And Eva, who won one of the cycles as well, who is probably one of the most known winners of America's Next Top Model, she came out and defended Tyra Banks against the critique that the model with vitiligo, you know, made against Tyra Banks. But also the season that Eva won, the person who was the runner-up, the other person, her name was Yaya. I thought she was absolutely beautiful. She was definitely Afrocentric. She embraced her natural beauty, her natural hair, her natural skin, all of that good stuff. But she was critiqued a lot about how she expressed her ethnicity, and it was allowed. It was not very comfortable to see that, but it definitely did happen. So these are some things that people mentioned, as well as a young woman who had alopecia, and she said that she just really felt like Tyra Banks in the show was just making her out to be a mean girl, and also made it about her alopecia versus about her talent, about her ability to take amazing photos and take good direction by the creative director so that she could give the photo shoots that were necessary to be done. So yeah, there may be some truth to the things, but what I loved about Danny is her response was classy. It was not classless. She did not trash or slam Tyra Banks or even America's Next Top Model, but she did share some truths, and I really love and respect her even more for that. I hadn't heard anything about her in many years, so it makes me want to go and look her up and see, you know, what she's got going on. But it's good to see that she looks good. She's doing well. She is more confident in herself and in her own skin. And she used this opportunity as a moment to encourage young women who may be feeling not so good about themselves. So is Tyra Banks a tyrant? I don't know. But she did come out and she made a statement. And she did it on Twitter. And she said, "Been seeing the posts about the insensitivity of some past ANTM moments, and I agree with you. Looking back, those were some really off choices. Appreciate your honest feedback, and I'm sending so much love and virtual hugs." I think that's big of her, because yeah, maybe she was a tyrant back then, but who's to say she's like that now? I do believe people have the opportunity to grow and to change, and even if she was that way before, doesn't mean that she's that way now, doesn't mean she doesn't have regrets, and that she can own up to what she did and say, guys, that happened, I'm sorry, let's move forward. So let's talk about it, guys, in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about it. Do you think Tyra was a tyrant? And if you feel that she was, do you feel like she's changed a bit? How do you feel about Danny's response to the past and how she was treated on the show? And let's just have a discussion about it. So thank you so much for watching, listening, liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. So guys, this is the Minister of Beauty, here to share the Bible. That's business, inspiration, beauty, life, and enjoyment. And until the next episode, have an amazingly blessed and beautiful day.